Welcome to Always Ageless with Valerie V. I'm your host, Valerie Van De Zilver. This is a show where we dive into the journeys, challenges, and triumphs of living life to its fullest at any age. So whether you're navigating your own transitions or you're supporting your aging parents through theirs, we are here with stories, wisdom, practical advice, inspiration. Today, we're tackling a topic that touches so many of us. Caring for aging parents. We may be the adults of aging parents. We might not be so old as we are, but it's a challenging topic. And with 11,000 people turning 65 every single day, it's going to happen to most of us very soon. But what if there was a way to approach this journey that honored our parents' wisdom, respected their wishes? That's hard. And gives us as their children the tools we need to provide a better life for them and for us. Our guest today is David Moyer, the brilliant mind behind ElderHonor, an organization that's dedicated to doing just that. He's here to share how we can all become stronger advocates for our parents, navigate the complexities of caregiving, and it isn't easy, and harness the power of education and planning to create a brighter future for those that we love. But that's not all. David is also the cutting edge of technology and AI, that's right, artificial intelligence, how they're reshaping the world of medicine and care. So if you've ever wondered about the future of caregiving and how to balance innovation and compassion, David is going to show you how to do that. So stay with us. You'll walk away with valuable insights, actionable steps, and perhaps even a little more peace of mind as you care for the people who cared for you, or as you see that day coming into your life. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Valerie. Good to be speaking with you again.
With over 50 million people over 65 today, and that number increasing, it's likely that you or your family members will be providing for a senior very soon. We say that everybody has a senior in their life somehow, and it's a familiar story. Sitting with our parents, getting the care they couldn't ask for, or they didn't want to admit they need. I know I'm going through that right now with my mom. You fly cross country for days at a time. You're an advocate with doctors and nurses. You manage meds. You have conversations that you never thought you would have to have. And we hear stories like that every day. You think that this will never happen to you. Pretty soon you find out that you're having to take care of your mom or your dad. You have no idea what to do. Nobody gave us a book on that. I know I had to deal with it with my dad. And at that point, I thought, I can't be the only person that's dealing with this. So you get to a point, as David and his wife did, where you have a situation in your life that causes you to say, I have to do something about this. We hear stories every day. And one day it says, I've got to change something. So David Moyer made it his goal to honor his aging parents by gaining education and tools so that they have the knowledge to provide a better life. Sounds simple? Well, let's find out if it is, because if he can make it simpler, that's a great thing for all of us. But there's a human side of David. He brags that he has had more takeoffs than landings. And I'm not sure how that happened, but he's going to tell us about it. His professional journey did begin in the Air Force, so maybe that's a clue. He's a graduate from Wharton School of Business. And if you know anything about Wharton, you know that that's a school for really bright people. And he led the development of something called track and trace. And some people think that's like track and field, but it's not. It's track and trace. David, welcome, and please tell us about ElderHonor. What inspired you to create this organization, and how does it stand out from other elder care initiatives that we hear about?
Thank you. And that's thank you for the introduction. ElderHonor started as a result of both my wife's and my parents' aging, and they got to a point where they needed either one or both of us involved in their care, either as an advocate or going and walking through their medications with them, or going to the doctors with them, or the hospitals when they were in there. And to me, it seemed like chaotic. When this would arise, all of a sudden we were in a crisis mode, and
Yeah.
we had to go figure out what to do. And at the time, I was with a firm called KPMG, one of the big four. It used to be the big eight, then the big six, now it's the big four, as a management consultant. And my background is business process reengineering. We'd go into companies and show them how to make their business processes better, optimizing them. And then I was the technology guy that after the optimization came in, I'd implement the technology to make it better than the optimization of just the process. So I was one of those guys that was out Monday morning and back Friday night or Saturday
Oh,
morning
sure.
kind of thing. And my wife was doing her thing, and the kids came along. And this is right about when the kids were in middle school and just going into high school. And I was clocking 200,000 or 300,000 miles a year in airplanes. And the families, our parents, started requiring all this care. The other complication was we lived just outside of Philadelphia,
Uh-huh.
and my wife's parents are in Southern California, right where you are.
Oh, where we are.
Yeah.
Well,
And
those two are close to each other, right? Philadelphia and
yeah,
Southern California. You
that's
could just
right.
go over every night at dinner time and check on them.
That's right. So we were flying her out to Southern California when she needed. And it you would think that that would be expensive, but because of all the frequent flyer miles I had,
Right.
it was like, yeah, sure, go. And then I was senior enough where I could reschedule my client meetings and stay home with the kids and take them to school and their sports and all of those kinds of things.
Mhm.
But it got to a point where we had to set thresholds on when to fly, because it was, every month or every 3 weeks or something like that. So my wife was really, really good at spotting this, and she started asking different questions. And 6 times out of 10, it was a UTI with her mom kind of thing. So she could get an ambulance there, have a neighbor come and get her and take her over to the hospital or a doctor and things like that. But here I am sitting as a management consultant, and I'm asking my friends, my colleagues, who are world-class consultants. Like, we're all the same age and going through the same thing. And I'm going, what are you guys doing? And the hands down response was, we're just winging it. And I'm thinking to myself, these are world-class consultants and we're winging it. I mean, there's all kinds of memes about that, but when it comes to your parents, it's not a good thing to do.
No.
So, so I took it on myself and said, this is aging is a process. I mean, you have variance, sometimes large variance, sometimes small variance, but it's a process. We know that process. Once you get in it, I mean, there's a
No
definite
getting out.
process and a definite outcome, and it different ways to get there, but it's pretty similar when you think it through. So I spent about a year, 11 months to a year, researching everything I could on the aging process. I eventually became a certified senior advisor
Which is
and
where I met
built,
you at the Certified Senior Advisors Conference. Yes.
that's right, and built a training platform, an online training platform that teaches adults how to manage the health and well-being of their parent. And it's not your typical caregiver kind of training, not your nurse training or your long-term care caregiver. It's you and me who don't need that extra help yet. We're not that far along. But if you don't know what to do in when you need to do things, it's your crisis management. You're back to crisis management. So the program starts with how to start that conversation, because nobody wants to start the conversation, about aging. And
No, they don't. And your parents don't want to hear about it. And you don't want to, you don't, we, just like with your friends, we, in the back of our minds, we don't want to have to deal with it.
Right.
We don't want to have to deal with it. We want our parents, if you're like me, we want our parents to just get old and just go to sleep one day,
Yeah.
right?
Be happy. You know, it never occurred to me until I was much, much older that my parents would ever die. And it doesn't occur to them until
No,
they're much, much older
no,
that they're going to die. And
no.
we need to prepare for that. We need to prepare um, ourselves for that emotionally. We need to prepare what's going to happen as this occurs. Um, you know, because a plan, every business has a plan. This is in the back of my mind. You just don't wing it. Those companies that wing it don't last too long. They have plans. They have annual plans broken down to quarterly plans, broken down to monthly plans, and then everybody has their piece of that plan. So it's all planned out. You have things come in from left corner every now and then, but it's all planned. So the whole idea with the online training is that you start that conversation and you show them that you're interested in helping them work through that plan. And for me, it was kind of interesting because, um, well, you probably know this, and your listeners have probably heard this. This actually lands on the eldest daughter's lap, and she's most responsible for caregiving for parents. It's the eldest daughter.
Is that
It's
right?
like 70% of the time.
Really?
Yeah. So my wife is the eldest daughter, and my sister was the eldest daughter in my family, in our family. So I was kind of coming in behind her and, being the sidekick in those conversations where my wife was the primary person and I was the sidekick there. And then my sister, who was doing all this, went into the hospital for an appendectomy, and a nurse injected her with the wrong medication, and she was
Oh,
gone 45 minutes later. So, dealing with that, and then dealing with, my parents, and then because we both had step parents, my dad's wife passed away 2 weeks after my sister passed away. It's kind of like
okay.
all at the same time. And my wife was the primary advocate for my dad's wife, my stepmother, if that makes sense. So it was a double whammy for her, and very, very an emotional time. So the whole effort for elder honor is to honor your elders, to make sure you know what they want, to make sure that whatever they have, you distribute the way they want you to distribute things when they're gone, not the way you want it or you think. In that and in those discussions, you find out more about your parent than you would have ever thought to ask before. Because when you're younger, you don't ask your mom or your
No,
dad,
no, you
hey,
don't. No,
where did you first live? And
no.
how many different locations did you and mom live at before you landed here in our house? You just
Yeah,
don't think of asking those
no,
questions.
no. No,
So,
and no, and it's interesting, and I can see your frustration. I think it's really interesting and almost funny, except it's not a funny subject, is that I have a husband who's very, my husband's a geek, he's a Wharton guy who didn't graduate from Wharton, but all of his mentors are Wharton guys. And so I see you thinking, okay, every day I make processes for other people, right? And people hire me and pay me a lot of money to come up with a plan so that everything runs smooth. And then you see this, which is a repeated process. Millions of times a day, someone passes away, and you guys who are Wharton and Harvard grads are winging it, right? So I can understand how that must have been a really frustrating situation for you.
yeah, it seems like the more left brain, I think it's left brain, the more technical or logical you are, the harder it is to figure this out because first of all, it tends to get really emotional. You don't talk to your parents about this.
Mm-mm.
And there are some cultures that you don't talk to your parents ever. And I've run into that. So my background is my dad is full-blood German. My
Oh,
mom
well,
is
yeah.
my mom is full-blooded Italian.
Oh,
So
that was a good mix. Yeah.
yeah, I tell people I'm very passionate about things, but I have to get it right.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. And my husband is Dutch, so he's kind of in between there.
yeah, right. So, on the German side, it's, hey, I can do everything. Don't ask me. I'm fine. I can't walk right now, but I'll figure it out. And, my mom is whatever, just come on and
Yeah.
help me out
Yeah.
here. Come and here's the
Just bring me some
checkbook, here's
pasta.
this.
Yeah, just bring me some pasta and a glass of wine and everything will be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, it was the wine that she wanted most, but
Yeah, yeah. Oh, we can do that too. Yeah, so this is very interesting. And I should tell our audience that when I first met you, it was at the CSA conference, and I walked into your room where you were presenting, and you had material that was so fascinating that I almost recorded the whole session and sent it on a Zoom link or on a YouTube for my husband. So I'm fascinated with all the thought that you put into so many things, and I want to get to some of that.
sure.
But let's talk about, and I think you've covered it, but your so what does honoring your parent mean to you? And what framework is that a part of your program? How do you honor them? I mean, is that being respectful, or of the honor part, what is that?
Yeah. So honor is number 5 in the Big Ten, honor your parents. So that's where that came from. Because it's, yeah, sure, everybody honors their parents and all like it, but we don't. I mean, we can kind of defer to their judgment, but when we're in this space, the honor part is literally asking them what they would like to do, how they would like to approach things, involving them in the decisions instead of saying, well, they can't figure it out, so I'll just tell the doctor this. And that's not honoring to your parent, regardless of their cognitive capabilities. And we've gone through that on both sides of our family, where one parent was sharp as a tack, and the other one was dealing with Alzheimer's for 11 years before she passed away. My mother had Alzheimer's, and I'll tell you, if we have enough time, I'll tell you a little story about that. But it's just involving them in the process of aging and involving them in the process of dying, and honoring that respect as much as possible. Hang on a second.
It's fascinating. And no matter who I talk to or what field they're in, we all have the same question, is why do we have this difficulty talking about it? Because
Right.
our parents raised us, they took care of us, they, I mean, they wiped our little butts, right? And yet we're at this stage and we're so uncomfortable. And it's good, I think, that we've learned to respect our parents so much that there's some kind of a distance between that, right?
Right.
You have, there is a distance between us. And I think that's okay from a matter of respect. But I went through this yesterday with my mom, although I go through it with her all the time. I mean, my mom is going to be 105 in 3 weeks, less than
Oh,
3 weeks.
great. That's
And
great.
she doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't want anybody to do anything that she could do herself. And I understand these challenges. I think I do. And you said something earlier that, when my dad passed away, the day before I passed away, I said, Dad, aren't you, it was 99. I said, Dad, aren't you looking forward to go seeing Bill and Tom and Fred and your other friends? And he said, no, it's Dad. It's going to happen like tomorrow. And he's, well, this isn't how it's supposed to be. But in fact, it is. And if in fact we are believers and we believe that we're going to go spend time in heaven, then really our time on earth is temporary. And we're supposed to be looking forward to that.
Right.
But nobody is. It's uncomfortable for them. It's uncomfortable for us. And so we all get to this point where we are today. So that being said, in your opinion and in your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges that adult children face when dealing with or caring for their aging parents? And how does ElderHonor help navigate those challenges?
The biggest challenge is just starting the conversation, just starting it, having some way to get to start talking about, what should we be doing to help make things easier? How do we want to do assessments on a regular basis? So the first part of the training is just how to have that conversation. And there's examples in the training that say, for example, use your aunt or uncle or a friend or a different family member and say, because there's always examples popping up like this. So my aunt was left alone because her husband passed away, and she didn't have any insurance. So Mom, what insurance do you have? I don't want you to be in that situation. So what kind of insurance have you put in place? What kind of long-term care? What kind of, obviously Medicare and maybe Medicaid is in there in that mix as well. But is there any life insurance? Is there any long-term care insurance and those kinds of things? So use examples that you can see in every regular day activities. Statistics, there's all kinds of statistics. You said this, 10 or 11,000 people turn 65 every single day.
Every day.
That's a big number. That's a basketball stadium worth of people every day. When you put it in that context, it's like the stadium where the Lakers play.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big, yeah, you're right. You're right.
So it's that kind of thing. So, if there's that many people getting old or getting that, what are they all doing to prepare for, staying in their home as they age? What do we need to do so there's no tripping hazards? Because half of elders that are in the emergency room are there because of concussions. They've tripped on something and they whacked their head, and now they've got concussion and they're trying to figure it out. So let's just clear the full floor of rugs that can move around.
I got that lesson yesterday. A lady from a caregiving company came to Mom's house, and she said to me, "Those rugs have to go." And I said, I know, but I like the rugs. They make her house look pretty. They make it look warm. She said, "Get rid of the rugs."
Yeah. It's either
I
the
didn't
rug.
realize that was the number. What's the number of people that it's from falls?
Falls, yeah. They're falling on, and it's a combination of falls, tripping hazards, electrical cords, tripping hazards, the the classical furniture, like Victorian furniture, where the legs come out at an angle.
Which nobody needs anymore, and as soon as they're dead, that's the first thing that's going to disappear, right?
And nobody wants your stuff either. So we walk people through those conversations, and then assessments. There's health assessments. There's social assessments. What kind of social media are you on? So we can figure out how to keep you engaged with that, because a lot of people are on social media now. There's financial assessments. At the early stages, we ask people just find out who their financial advisors are or what banks they're using. You don't need to find balances or anything like that. That'll come later in the discussion.
Sure.
Just kind of pull all that information together so everybody has it, so you can see it in one place. So there's 30 worksheets and checklists that are included with this training that go through all of those kinds of things. Health assessments. You're familiar with activities of daily living, and independent daily activities of daily living. So there's those in there that you can walk through every 6 months. Mom, can you do this on your own? Can you drive your own car? Can you balance your own checkbook? Can you toilet yourself? Can you do these kinds of things? And as you go through those things with your parents, they can also see what's happening. So it's not a shock when they lose an ability. The other biggest shock is loss of independence. So I
Yep.
can't drive my car anymore.
Losing the car keys. Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
my mom believes that if and we were talking about this yesterday, her license was renewed when she was 100 because it can't discriminate. And she said, well, if I had a car, I could go where I want to by myself. We said, yes, that you could. But what about everybody else on the road? That's the problem. So one of the most emotionally charged aspects of caregiving is advocating for our parents when others see them just as a patient or a case
Yes.
number.
Yes.
I went through this. I'm sure you did too. When my dad was in his last days and he was at a boarding care, I said to them, and I think now how they must have laughed at me when I said to them, now don't you just put him in a corner and treat him like an old man.
Yeah.
At what point they must have been saying, lady, your dad is 99, right?
Yeah.
But I had known my dad not that way, right? My dad had been independent. My mom and dad were married for 78 years and lived by themselves. So I'm sure you saw this with going through it with your parents and with dementia,
Yes.
where they don't think of them as a live human person, right? Still functioning. And how do you deal with that? And how do you teach other people to deal with that?
So I've done an enormous amount of management consulting in the healthcare industry. And early on, my mom needed a hip replacement. So she went to the local hospital, and I asked to come along to talk to the orthopedic surgeon. And because I'd been talking to doctors for years, and had been able to get out of the, God complex that doctors, not intentionally, but are attributed that complex by a lot of people. A doctor, especially my parents' age, whatever the doctor says, that's golden. Just do what he says,
Sure.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And because I had talked to so many doctors around technology, and they were asking me questions, that whole God complex just kind of evaporated pretty quick. So I could talk to a doctor on a regular, hey, how you doing today, John? Or, Sally, what's going on? Kind of thing. And I think most of them appreciated it. Every now and then you get one that didn't, but so we went into this orthopedic surgeon, and the surgeon said, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how it's going to work, and this is the recovery period, your standard pre-surgery kind of meeting. And then I started asking questions, and I said, so how many vendors do you use for hip replacements? And he just kind of went, what are you talking about? And I go, vendors. How many different vendors? Because there's about 40 different hip replacement vendors out there. Which ones do you use? He goes, well, we use these 9 vendors, huffy. And I said, so which one are you using on my mom? And he said, well, we're using this one. And I said, so how many of those have you put in the last 12 months? And he just sat up in his chair and he goes, what are you getting at? And I go, I'm just asking, you got 9 vendors. You apparently use them all. How many of this specific vendor have you put in the last 12 months? And he goes, I don't know, 6 or 7. And I go, thank you very much. I think we're done. My mom was going, what are you doing? And I go, Mom, this guy's only put 6 of these in people in the last 12 months. And he's saying he's only done 100 surgeries for the last 12 months, and only 6 of those have this version, this vendor. I go, we need to find somebody that's a little more versed in this vendor, And
Yeah.
he just about kicked us out of the office. So those are the kinds of advocate things that you really need to step up and put in place. And that gets harder with Alzheimer's We were lucky. The CCR, the continuous care retirement community that my mom and her husband were in, was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. My mom had a lot to do with it. Being Italian, she just wanted to hug everybody and laugh with everybody and drink with everybody, wine. And so she was everybody's friend. So the caregivers would come in and she'd crack jokes with them and all of that kind of stuff. And they would go out of their way to help her because her next door down was another woman who was in the same stage of Alzheimer's,
Uh-huh.
who was just nasty.
Yeah,
And nobody would come to visit her. Nobody, I mean, it was, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? But they went out of their way to help. And because we were up there, my sister was alive at that time. We were tag teaming. So every 2 weeks, she'd go up and I'd go up, and she'd go
sure.
up and I'd go up. So we knew the staff by name. We knew what medications she was getting. I knew the gerontologist that was in charge of that facility by name. And I went through like I said, all of the drugs. Why is she getting this? And what does this do? And what does this do? So, and that's just that grew out of me talking to so many doctors before. And what I tell people is doctors want you to be involved in their patients' caregiving.
They
They
seem
want
to,
to be
don't
able,
they? Yeah, they
yeah,
seem to, don't they?
they want to be able to explain what's going on. And the more you know about what's going on, the less scary it is, the less frightening you're going to be, the less emotional. There's this whole clinical concept, doctors are clinical and they have to be. I mean, it's
Sure.
clinical, just the facts, ma'am, kind of thing.
Right.
Because especially in CCRCs, their patients are dying on a frequent basis. So you can kind of attach yourself to that clinical aspect of a doctor with your parent in going through asking all of those questions. And that's one of the worksheets that we have in the training course is ask the questions. What is this for? What's the benefit of this? What if I don't do anything? Those three questions alone help you figure out and understand what the consequences are of any decision you're going to make with or for your parent.
This is fascinating because actually, I want to do an episode on being an advocate at the hospital or with your doctors. Because just as you said, most of us would never do that. That's like questioning authority.
Right.
And we've been taught not to. You've been
Yes.
taught you should respect your teachers, you should respect your professor, you should respect your pastor, and certainly you should respect your doctor. Because
Yes.
after all, it's like being mean to your doctor before he does surgery. Well, you don't want that to happen,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yes.
being mean to your hairdresser before she cuts your hair. Well, you know what you're going to get, right? It's very fascinating. I'd like you to tell us again, if you can remember, and you probably do. What are those three questions that you said people should ask?
So whenever there's going to be a medication or a treatment or a therapy, you ask, what is this for? What does it do? And ask a question, ask questions around this. How long does it last? How much time does it take before we start seeing any benefits? And the next one is the similar is what are the benefits of it? What are you going to get at? What is going to happen if she does this or he does this? And then what if we don't do anything? Because
It's
at the end stages of life, it doesn't matter sometimes what you
sure,
do.
sure.
It's okay, they're going to pass away in 3 months if we do this procedure or if we don't, because she's in the failure to thrive mode, which is another thing that I go over in the course and the training is modes of health. Catastrophic thing, heart attack, you're gone. Car wreck, you're gone kind of thing. Two, failure to thrive, which is the body can't keep up with itself and it can't recover anymore. So it's failure. It's a technical term, failure to thrive. And if you know that the end is near. And doctors kind of go back and forth with trying to predict um, dying because there's too many factors in play. So they can
Absolutely.
say 3 months, 6 months, a week, 2 weeks. My wife and I both have experienced putting our parents in hospice. And the day after my dad was put in hospice, he passed away.
Oh my gosh.
So, and they were thinking it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks.
Sure.
So, ask those questions. Doctors, if you have a doctor that gets upset asking questions, then change your doctor.
Change your doctor. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can change it. You can change the doctor.
Sure. Sure. And sometimes you think, oh, well, I'm better off with what I've got because at least I know what I have. And that's one reason not to. But
Right.
I wanted to change a little bit because I'm so fascinated, and I'm sure some of our viewers and listeners are too. I'm so fascinated by what I saw you teach about AI. I'm fortunate that I'm in a group of people who we use at the very least, we use Chat GPT, which is a far cry from a definition of AI, really. But forgive me and pacify me by acknowledging that at least we use Chat GPT. But
Yeah.
I saw you and I heard you talk about artificial intelligence in medicine and in care and the speed with which drugs are being created. David, talk to us a little bit so our listeners and our viewers can hear that, because most of us don't have exposure to that in our everyday lives.
Yes. So AI started to be the rage back in November of last year when it started hitting the news and things like that. But literally, it's been around since at least the 60s with engineers, programmers trying to figure out how to do how to make a machine think like a human. So when you hear AI, you hear a lot of brain kinds of terminology in AI. Neural networks is one because that's how your brain works. So they're taking those words and trying to apply them to technology. So the first base technology, besides all the programming languages and learning to do that, is machine learning. And that's getting the computer to think the way we do. The last thing that added on to the AI part was this whole concept of large language models like ChatGPT, which is essentially you saw the image of a large Hoover vacuum hoovering up all the articles and the words in the books on the internet and then assigning them values. So when you go into ChatGPT, you're essentially having this machine on the back end, this machine learning engine on the back end, go in and see where all of those other references to your question are, and then create a response to it. So that's how that technically works. So you can go in and there are foundation models. There's 7 or 9 foundation models now. There's new ones coming out every 2 or 3 months that are literally what everything else is built on. So OpenAI, which runs ChatGPT, is a foundation model. Facebook, Meta, has its own foundation model called Meta Foundation. So, and they're getting better and better as they're able to pull in all of that information, but they hadn't been quite there enough to think like we do. Because when you look at it, when you give it a question in a chat box, it's literally not thinking. It's just pulling together random things that look like a response that would be helpful to you. So that's how it's doing. Well, now they're starting to bridge that thinking model where it can think through the way it's going to give you an answer. So for example, if you're saying, I've got I've got a pain right now. I have a pain in my left scapula, my shoulder blade. So tell me what I can do. What do you think caused it, and what can I do about it? So the newer models, and this is recently since the conference, a month ago, OpenAI came out with this, they call it Strawberry, where it stops and thinks, and then it goes through and researches anything that has to do with muscle in my scapula and what could have caused me to strain it. I know what I did, but I reached at a weird angle, and you're always doing that stuff. But it's looking at the research and then asking me a question and going back and getting some more research, and asking a question and going back and getting more research. So when it does that, what it's doing is thinking through the process of giving it an answer. So that's where we are now. And those models are going to start coming out. Well, OpenAI's model, Strawberry, is out now. You'll start seeing this come out with the other foundation models in the next couple months and towards the end of the year. But they've also, because they've been able to vacuum up all that information, they've also vacuumed up any kind of clinical research, any kind of clinical training, any kind of diagnosis and treatments and documents and all of that kind of stuff. So when I say I've got a pulled muscle under my scapula, it's actually going in there and pulling out, it's zeroing in on clinical information and pulling out information on how I did it and what I can do to fix it. One of the things that these new models are doing is there's the United States Medical License Exam, USMLE, that all the physicians have to pass to get board certified, to get certified as a physician. The average pass rate is 75%.
Okay.
You would think that would be good, but in high school that was a C. So these large language models are coming in at 80, 85, 90, 92%. So they're and it's a comparison between having that information at your fingertips, literally in the machine, or in your brain, that you can recall those facts and figures when you're on a test. That's the difference. A doctor could have figured it out, giving it a little more time and maybe a couple more questions. And there are people that are good at exams, and people that aren't good at exams.
Yep. And
so that's what the machines can do. The machines learning questions are answers to those questions, and the AI can do now.
So number one is how does that help me? And do doctors really use it?
So it can help you, and this is a huge caution. It can help you by answering your medical questions. And the caution is it may not always be correct, because the way the technology is behind the scenes, it may not give you acceptable clinical documentation or diagnosis. And we're at the point right now where we tell people, don't go to AI, ChatGPT or Meta or Gemini for a clinical diagnosis. You can ask questions around it and get an understanding for it, but always go to the doctor, because there are things that doctors can see that AI is not obviously seeing.
Sure.
And they can ask questions. And just by looking at you, and just when you made that little movement to your mouth, I know that there's something else going on there as a doctor. So I go, okay, stop. Tell me what that meant. So an AI machine isn't there to be able to do that yet. So you can use it for general information, and you'll start seeing, I don't know if hospitals or healthcare networks are going to do this, but they have chatbots that you can start using and get an idea of what you should do. And the default mode is always call your doctor.
Sure.
So,
and how does the medical industry feel about AI? I heard on a talk radio show several months ago that there's some statistic or claim to be statistic that the results of, let's say, colonoscopy are significantly more accurate if they're run through AI because they're analyzed by a human being who may not have had a good lunch, who may or may not be tired or busy that day.
Yeah.
And as much as we trust our radiologists and so forth, supposedly the statistics are that they're so much more accurate. Is that true? And how does the medical industry feel about this? Are they embracing it?
Yeah, so it's still new, even though there's a lot of apps and applications for AI coming out. But the biggest area for AI right now worldwide is healthcare because because of that machine learning capability behind it. So it's always on. It's always got the data at its fingertips or, keyboard kind of thing. You don't have a bad day, like I mentioned in the talk, whether you crash the car on the way in or you have an upset stomach and you're grumpy, or, I mean, I'm sure you've never had a day like that. So,
Not true, but thank you very much for the compliment.
so you get all those out of the way. Um, and still, everybody is saying you still have to have the human in the middle. So when you have a radiologist reading an image, the AI can come up almost instantly with the reading the what the image is saying. Sorry, the name is escaping my brain here. But the radiologist still has to look at the image and look at the impression. That's the word, the impression
Right.
of what the AI came up with, and then modify it. And then the AI learns from that and goes back and forth. So it's the same thing with these co-pilots. When you're in the doctor's office and they bring out their phone or they set up their computer, and the doctor has to let you know that the AI is going to be listening in. The AI is literally transcribing what he's saying in your response and building the clinical note as they go. So at the end of the visit, the doctor can just look at the clinical note and then make any modifications and then approve it, and it goes in the system. So you still have a human in the middle. I don't know for the next several years that we'll get around that because there's things, like I said, a doctor can see a twitch or a question, or again, you just looked up in the left hand, you looked up and left. That means to me that you're thinking about something. So, there you go with asking other questions. So
Sure. Yep.
the success rate for some pretty good sized health networks is getting pretty large. There's well over 200,000 doctors that are using this on a daily basis now.
Yeah. That's
Because of the benefit is they're not going home and working 3 or 4 hours
sure.
extra
Sure.
on patient charts or writing notes, clinical notes.
Sure. And this is fascinating. And, I think it's so interesting. And I hope that our listeners and our viewers are learning something from this. It's a little bit techy, and it takes a little bit of extra effort to listen through it. But I think it's really fascinating and that it's going to be a more important part. And it's so new that it's great. I enjoy learning more about it. But we've got just a few minutes left. Unfortunately, we should have a whole nother session on the
No.
technology part. I could talk to you for a long time and so much we still haven't talked about. But you work with families to create a better life. And I know that you have some programs. So tell us about the programs that you have through your company, and what are those available? You've got some training manuals. Is it something that's available for people on the lay level or only for professionals?
So all of the training on ElderHonor is for regular people, not clinical, not PhDs. It's just you and me trying to figure out how to manage the health and well-being of our parent. There's a complete cool toolkit there, and that gives you all the 14 stages of starting the conversation, doing health assessments, figuring out where they're going to live. Are they going to move in with you? Are you going to move in with them?
That's
Are
a
they
good
going
question. Yep.
Yeah, group home, continuous care retirement community. But to know that, you need to know their financials so you can help them decide on what they can do and if they
Sure.
have to move in or when they
Sure.
move, what are you going to do with all the stuff?
All of
You
the
know,
things.
so there's good things and bad things about all of that stuff. So we help you walk through that and then get all the documents and estate plan. If you own anything, you need to have an estate plan. So in a will, in medical power of attorney. So we walk people through all of those things and how to get them started. I don't do that. There's a lot of free stuff up on the website, elderhonor.com, on the links page. If you need to find
Okay.
an estate attorney, there's the Estate Attorney Association of the United States. Go in there, put your zip code in, and you'll find an estate attorney
Yeah.
or an elder attorney that can deal with a lot more.
Mhm.
Or area agency on aging. Every single county has an aging agency. Every county in the US, all
That's the
35 of
Council
them.
on Aging, right? It's
Area agency on aging, yeah. It's just type it into or go up on the website on the links page on Elder Honor, and you'll see all of those links up there that you can just start those conversations, and they will come in and talk to you and help you figure out what's going on.
And in the last 1 or 2 minutes we have, unfortunately, that's all we have. What does the future of Elder Honor look like? What is something that you would like to continue or create or implement that will really affect families in the future years and will give you gratification?
So the whole idea behind Elder Honor is literally honoring your parents and working with them to get through this process of aging and learning more about them during the aging process, to have conversations, especially when they're having cognitive problems, and do that. There's a real simple way to have a conversation when those occur, and it is able to bring out more of the relationship and to include and embrace and empower that relationship that you have with your parents as they age, for not only you, but your sisters and brothers and your aunts and uncles, and have return that family relationship and make it whole, because not everybody has a good family relationship.
No.
So this is part of, you know, before we leave this earth, make sure we're on a firm foundation of having a good relationship, because that's what it's all about, is the relationship with others and especially your
And
parents.
with
So
your
honor your
family.
parents.
Absolutely. This show is about giving resources, good stories, heartwarming stories, and information to people who are going through similar journeys or who have their own stories to tell. So how can people find you? Are you available to anyone? Can they find you somewhere where they can reach out and get information from you?
Sure. ElderHonor.com is the website. That's where the course is. You can take the course anytime. It'll take you right to it. You can send an email, david@elderhonor.com, for that part. And my technology consulting, my management consulting side is david@regulus.digital. So Regulus, like the star, .digital. And either one of those will get to me.
And we're going to show on the screen your contact information also. Thank you so much for being with us. You're a delight. You're an overabundant information and a great resource of information on so many aspects. We're so glad you are here. Thank you for joining us today. And please come back again next Monday for another episode of Always Ageless. We have a great guest coming up that I know that everyone will enjoy and will gain from also. So thank you for being with us today at Always Ageless. See you next Monday at 3 o'clock. And thank you, David Moyer, for being with us.
Thank you, Valerie. You're doing great work, and I appreciate being included in it. Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate you. Thank you.